May I start by noting the latest news from Ukraine. I know the whole House will be united in our outrage at the atrocities that have been reported and our deepest sympathy to the victims and our ongoing support and our solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Yeah. We will be united too in the message that we send to Putin. We will not waver in standing firm against his aggression. And the unity in this House reflects that in the country and amongst the constituents that we represent, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is all the more important in that context that we make sure that we do all we can to protect our country's security and our people's safety. That this government's ultimate responsibility is, and to us, is to this House and to keep people safe. And it is all the more important that we stand up for the fundamental values of democracy in stark contrast to the authoritarian regimes and dictatorships like that in the Kremlin today. And that is why we are here today, Madam Deputy Speaker, to defend our country's security and its democracy, and to hold our government to the highest standards in doing the same. Every minister has a fundamental duty to protect the people of this country, to prioritise their safety above all else. We have tabled this motion because serious questions have been asked about whether the current Prime Minister upheld that duty to the standard that we would expect, and because those questions have not been answered with the transparency that we would expect either. Madam Deputy Speaker, we must get to the facts of the case. An investigation by the Sunday Times found that on the 17th of March 2020, British intelligence warned the House of the Lord's Appointment and the Lord's Appointment Commission against granting a peerage to the Prime Minister's close friend, now the Lord Lebedev of Hampton and Siberia. The Commission concluded it could not support his nomination. 48 hours later, the Prime Minister visited Lebedev at his home in London. Details of that meeting have never been released to the public, and questions remain about whether the security services knew about this meeting or whether their assessments show that the Kremlin were keeping tabs on these activities. In July of 2020, Lebedev's appointment as peer was announced. So the question, Madam Deputy Speaker, is this: what changed between the security warning and the appointment? The British public have a right to know if and how an individual of apparent concern to our intelligence services was granted a seat at the heart of Parliament by personal order of the Prime Minister. Whether the Prime Minister was aware of that security advice but chose to ignore it, overrule it, or even demand that it be changed. And this isn't the first time concerns have been raised about Lebedev by the British security services. As long as a decade ago, Sir John Sayers, the head of MI6, made it clear that he did not deem Lebedev as a suitable person to meet. It remains unclear if the Prime Minister, the then Foreign Secretary, was made aware of these security concerns. But his deeply concerning links to Putin are well known. He has been open about them on Twitter, where he has promoted the worst conspiracy theories and the defences of Vladimir Putin, and raised questions over the murder of Alexander Litvinenko, the Kremlin critic poisoned in a London hotel. Lebedev's father and business partner is a former KGB spy-turned-billionaire oligarch who continues to fill his coffers with investments in occupied Crimea and in Russian munitions. We've heard worrying reports about the existence of a private back-channel between our Prime Minister and President Putin, facilitated by Lebedev. Can the Minister shed light on this deeply concerning allegation and rule out the existence of such back-channel? Madam Deputy Speaker, as the bombing of Ukraine and the tragedy continues and the threat from Russia in the West intensifies, does the Minister think this appointment in apparent opposition to security services was appropriate? The Cabinet Office plays a central role in the vetting process of Lord appointments. In Lord Lebedev's case, the Cabinet Office security officials were responsible for relaying intelligence and guidance to the House of Lords Appointment Commission, which formed the basis of their objections to his appointment. However, reports by the Sunday Times and written statement by the then Chief of Staff, the Prime Minister, alleged that he cut a deal to provide the Appointments Commission with a sanitised version of the advice. And could the Minister here today outline how, when and why the guidance changed after communication with the Prime Minister? And could he confirm whether the Cabinet Office had sight of security advice warnings against the appointment of Lord Lebedev? This is a matter of national security, and there could be no delay in getting the transparency in this case. Madam Deputy Speaker, there are also serious questions about whether the Prime Minister put his personal interest before the public interest in this case. The Prime Minister's apparent cavalier disregard for those serious security warnings speaks to a wider culture in the heart of this government where the rules do not apply when it comes to appointing friends and donors to public office. If the Prime Minister himself is willing to overrule British intelligence agencies, this raises serious questions about appointments more generally and specifically in the House of Lords. Appointments to the Lords should be made based on integrity and contribution to our country. They're not some free pass. They're not a golden ticket for the Prime Minister to grant to their mates, like a membership to some posh London boys' club. It's a way to say thanks to billionaire mates after years of wining and dining and champagne receptions and holidaying, and not to mention the favourable headlines. But seriously, the appointment to this Parliament should be on the basis of dedication, integrity and contribution to public life in Britain. I'll happily give way.
Madam Speaker, I do thank the honourable member for giving way. Clearly, I represent a far-flung part of the United Kingdom, and there are good and hard-working citizens who give their entire working lives for the communities, and in the past this has been recognised by means of an honour. Order of the British Empire Medal, whatever. Can I suggest, Honourable Lady, and to everyone in this place, that the Lebedev peerage cheapens the whole system of honours and reduces its value to those people who genuinely deserve to be recognised in civil society?
Absolutely, I fully agree with the honourable member's contribution. Dedication, such as we saw during the pandemic, by our key workers, doctors and nurses who put their lives on the line to save the lives of others. But instead, we see reports that the Prime Minister parachuted his close friend Lord Lebedev into the heart of the UK's Parliament, a man with whom the Prime Minister has enjoyed a decade-long courtship, which included a stay at the oligarch's castle in 2018, where he is reported to have attended a party over the course of a weekend, with all his flights and accommodation paid for by Lebedev. An investigation by The Guardian revealed that during his stay, the Prime Minister, who was then Foreign Secretary, is reported to have met with Alexander Lebedev, the former KGB agent and father of Lord Lebedev. The party took place just days after the Prime Minister, the then Foreign Secretary, attended a NATO meeting to discuss the response to the Salisbury poisoning. The Salisbury poisoning, in which the nerve agent Novichok was used in an assassination attempt on the lives of the Skripals. Immediately following the meeting, in which Putin's deadly attack on British soil was discussed, the Prime Minister reportedly ditched his security protection to attend a Lebedev party where a former KGB agent was in attendance. The Prime Minister seems to be more interested in attending parties with Russian billionaire mates than listening to the concerns of the British security services. Madam Deputy Speaker, culture is set from the top. Appointments matter. Politicians will come and go, but Lord Lebedev will be a permanent fixture of our Parliament in the other place for decades. There is a serious precedent to be set in this case about how Parliament chooses to appoint those who represent us. It also raises serious questions about the relaxed vetting process of Lord's appointments, creating a security risk at the heart of our democracy. This must be taken seriously, and for that reason, I ask the Minister, will there be a review of the House of Lords appointment process? We must ensure that a robust vetting system is in place which safeguards our democracy and ensures transparency to the public. Indeed, the Lord Speaker recently called for a more rigorous appointment process for peers. We have a Prime Minister who appears willing to jeopardise the security of the British public for the sake of a personal friendship. The culture is set from the top, and in this case raises much wider concerns about public appointments. And it's time for the Prime Minister to come clean today on if and why he interfered with the British intelligence to award a peerage to his close personal friend. The Cabinet Office full guidance about a peerage for Mr Lebedev before it was mysteriously airbrushed must now be published in the national interest. The Prime Minister claims that the advice can't be published because it will undermine the confidence in the appointments process. Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's a bit late for that. In his actions, he has run roughshod over the integrity of the process and put his own interests before Britain's. Yeah, happily.
I'm very grateful for giving way. I'm sorry to intervene. I hope to speak later, but I thought she should be aware, she probably isn't, that since this debate started, Lord Lebedev has been tweeting furiously, implying that the inappropriateness of this House to even have this debate, Madam Deputy Speaker. That from a member of the other place, completely unacceptable. And if I may advise Lord Lebedev, extremely unwise.
I thank the honourable member for making the House.
Order. If what the honourable gentleman says is correct, and I have no reason to doubt him, though of course I haven't seen the content of the tweets, if it was inappropriate for any debate to be occurring in this chamber, it would not be occurring. Angela Rayner.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And will be tied anyone that tells Madam Deputy Speaker what's appropriate or not to debate in this chamber. The suggestion, in his actions, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Prime Minister has run roughshod over the integrity of the process and put his own interest before Britain's. The suggestion that questions of suitability for the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister alone just won't cut it. And when it's as clear as day that he has so flagrantly disregarded advice and intervened in this process, it is he, I would say, who has undermined it time and time again. Yeah, happily.
I thank the right lady for giving way, and I do apologise for interrupting her flow. Can I just clarify a point? Is it the Labour Party's position, therefore, that the House of Lords Appointment Commission should have a veto? Given that it is her shadow portfolio, I'd just be keen to understand how she, she's talking about there about the Prime Minister's role in this. Does she believe the House of Lords Appointment Commission should have that veto?
The honourable member makes a point, but my point I'm making is that the security advice was given and the Commission recommended that that wasn't the case. So if the Prime Minister overrides that advice, then I'm surely we should have reason and transparency as to why the Prime Minister went against the advice of the security services and the advice of the Commission. I think that's very important, and I think it's a robust way of dealing with things. Happily give way, yeah.
I thank the honourable lady for giving way. Does she agree with me that according to the allegations in some of the Sunday Times reports, the Prime Minister went to visit the now Lord Lebedev about the advice he'd been given by security services to give him his assurance that he wanted to give him this peerage at the time when coronavirus was raging, when businesses were being asked to close and schools were about to be asked to shut down. Yet this was a priority for the Prime Minister when the rest of us were having to put our entire lives on hold. Does she think that's an appropriate use and a priority for the Prime Minister in the middle of a national and global crisis?
Indeed. The honourable member makes a very good point, and no, I don't think it's a very good use, and the concerns around what the Prime Minister thought was appropriate during his own lockdown lockdown rules I cannot get into in this debate because it's not on the motion. These dangerous links to Putin's oligarchs threaten our national security. Today we can take a step, Madam Deputy Speaker, to defend